Welcome back to the X Podcast. Sitting here with my compadres. How are we feeling? How we doing?
Great. Awesome. Did you come up with another nickname for me?
Well, I, for your sake, intentionally avoided since last week you expressed that you don't love nicknames. Although I won't say who it was, but his name rhymes with Sty and Virgil. Texted me and said that he loved Homeschool Harry.
Homeschool Harry.
But I was practicing self-restraint, and so I was skipping over that segment. But we could dive back in.
Well, I'm open to new nicknames. It's not a nickname thing.
I don't think they're going to get better. If I were you, I would just let it go.
Toes in the water.
Toes in the sand.
Toes in the sand. Yeah.
Although I heard a story. Okay, this is offline, and we're gonna let's workshop names later.
Okay.
Okay, I have to say something.
Oh no.
The temperatures this week have not gone into double digits. I mean, they've barely gone into double digits.
They were in double digits yesterday.
Yeah, they were.
I clarified because I knew technical Tommy across here would correct that. I said barely double digits.
I want to point out something that I thought was really enjoyable, though.
Okay.
It's cold here.
Uh-huh.
You know, it's cold.
Yes.
Like, we won't beat around the bush. It's cold here.
Yeah.
But it's not only cold here. We actually have gotten off pretty easy because so much of the Midwest and the Northeast and out west have gotten pounded in snow.
Did you see both Southwest and United have canceled hundreds and thousands of flights?
Hundreds of thousands of flights?
Hundreds and thousands.
Okay, hundreds
of
and
flights,
thousands, respectively.
because of the icing issues and snow issues and visibility issues.
One of the things I was going to say that I thought was actually enjoyable, that my wife and I were both really getting a little bit of enjoyment out of, was seeing the winter temperature advisory in Orlando, Florida.
Was it a 50?
No, the wind chill was making it like 25. And so it just kind of like, we're like, isn't that cute?
Yeah.
It's like 40 for the low, but the wind chill was making it like 25. And they had this winter advisory warning, and it's like, well, I guess in Florida, probably not a lot of people have coats and gloves. And I don't even think you own a pair of gloves.
I do.
Okay.
But I feel like we're all cocky Yankees, That's just what we are.
What?
We're all cocky Yankees, we're the ones that go, like, even me now, when I go down south, I'm like, you guys think it's cold.
I love that.
Because my mom's like, Russ, it got really cold today. I was like, tell me how cold it is there. It was below 50. It was like 40-something degrees. I was like, it's 10 degrees here today.
It is.
But I will
chilly.
say, I got to say, these are the 2 months of the year where I really rethink my life's choices. And
it has been sunny, though, almost every day this week.
It has been sunny.
Cold, but sunny.
I will take that. I will take that. That actually really does
What would you rather be, gray and 35 or sunny and 18?
Sunny and 18.
Okay. The good news is, listen, I tell my wife.
But sunny and 18 and sunny and 8 are different.
She complains all the time, and she hates it, and I get it. But here's what I tell her. I said, and there are some that do. I said, you know what? It doesn't bother me that much because I don't work outdoors.
Yeah, I was about to say,
I
we're
literally
inside
drive
95% of the time.
Although
and I walk 20 paces, and I sit inside a nice warm building all day long, and then I get in the car and drive home to my warm house.
Yeah, but let me tell you something that I think that you have, probably both of you have, that I do not have as a luxury, is you have a garage.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you both have probably auto starts on your car.
I do.
That makes a difference.
I have a garage. He has a garage. I guarantee you $1,000 his car is not parked in the garage.
Yep.
In fact, I bet you my paycheck his car has never been parked in the garage.
Yep.
But you do have that auto start.
I do have an
That's a
auto
sweet
start.
feature.
And I do use that at times.
Do you know whose car is parked in the garage when
it's
it's
your
there?
wife's. Wait, how big's your garage?
It's a 2-car.
2?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
It'll only hold one ever.
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
That's just the way it works.
I will say last night.
It might not though. We're trying. We have a shed. We got a new house, and so in the backyard there's a nice shed, and
maybe you can get
so
both
maybe we
cars
can get
in.
both cars in now. We can get the lawnmowers and all the tools out of the way.
I will say last night we had prayer night, and Greg Miller, shout out to Greg. He, by the time this comes out, may have his brand new baby, have his first child, because him and Abby are, I think, the 27th is the due date. But the baby could come any day. But anyways, he was here last night, We had our church prayer night for 21 days of prayer and fasting. He was down there, and I think by this point it had dropped below 10 degrees. He had on like these mesh sheer thin shorts. And I went up to him and I said, hey, I am not trying to rag on you. Why do you have on shorts? He said, well, it is scientifically proven that if you wear shorts and short sleeve shirts in cold weather, it builds up your body to where you can expand and endure worse temperatures. I said, you're an intelligent person. That may be the dumbest thing I've ever heard you say.
I can see that.
Yeah, I can see that too. If you're planning to make a grand life move to Antarctica and you need to.
We have a guy here on staff that likes to wear shorts. He is wearing pants the last couple of days, but he'll wear shorts down to 20 degrees. Adam?
What? I moved.
He wears shorts all the
to
time.
help someone move in shorts, and it was like this cold outside, and you like looked at me like I had 4 eyes.
Yep. Yep. There's something wrong with that. There's something biologically going on. All right.
We should move on.
Let's move on. So last week we had a conversation behind the scenes. Thousands of emails like we requested, just confirming that this was the desire of the fans and that they have follow-up questions. That didn't quite happen, but I will say we did get some great feedback though. And there was one email, I'll keep it vague, but one email in a way was just complimentary. So they'd been listening for a long time and really found value out of these episodes, but also was complimentary to the culture. They could tell. We have a lot of people say like from a distance they can tell that there is a chemistry, a camaraderie, and it was just complimentary to the culture we have. Can tell everybody likes each other. But then also just kind of opened up about him not experiencing the same thing where he's at. And so we kind of hinted towards this and talked about following up the conversation with the culture of our church, how we got there. And so let's dive in a little bit. I obviously have only been here for like 5.5 years. You started the church back in the 30s. And so it's been through its ups and downs. It's been through its mountains and valleys. And so I don't know what diving board we want to jump off of to kick this off. But when you think about, because I've heard you say this over every year that I've been here.
I know it was about to come out
it was about to come out weird, but that's not how I meant it. But I have heard you say multiple years in a row that our staff, our church culture is the healthiest you've ever known it. And you love what we're building, and it's getting healthier every year. To the point you feel comfortable, take us back to where it was not so healthy. And what are some of the changes? What are some of the shifts?
Well, not to what's a great phrase they say? Not to pull skeletons out of the closet, or what are some? I think I can go back to the time when we moved forward to change it intentionally.
Yeah.
And I think it would have been back in 2018 that we really felt the this adage we've heard before. I know I've heard Craig Rochelle say it. I'm not sure he's the one that came up with it, but I understand it to be so true. The culture you have, you get either by design or by default. So what I would say is leading up to 2018, the culture that we had was by default. It was a product of growth, expansion, the people that we hired, and not having a direct intentionality on creating a specific culture. And so there were a lot of elements of the culture that happened, I would say, by default. In other words, we weren't thinking about culture. In fact, I've often said when people have asked me if I could go back and start over, I mean, there's so many different things, you'd always do differently.
Sure.
But if I could go tell myself something going back to when I started full-time or doing this, I would have really expressed the importance of creating the right culture to begin with. It's probably one of the most significant, I'm not going to say regrets, but kind in a way of like, it was a blind spot. I just didn't know. I mean, part of it comes from, never being in a large church or growing church. We weren't always, a larger church like we are I would say now, but we've always been growing from a handful of people all the way through. And a lot of it is just not having any experience. I think it's just a lack of organizational experience, leadership experience, a lack of understanding. And so, as our church through the years started growing, especially after 2008 and Lithopolis, it started growing quickly and expanding. It was just like, oh man, we need to hire someone. We need to hire someone. We need to hire someone. And you're hiring people because you have such great need, and you're not thinking about culture. You're thinking about, do they have a certain skill set? Can they help you get the job done? Can they fill a gap?
Would this be a way to say it? Like, I feel like, and culture's a buzzword now.
Yes.
Yep.
But back then, probably part of it is a lot of organizations thought about mission, not culture.
Yeah.
Culture was secondary.
We 100% always thought about mission.
And so
never
when you
thought about
hired,
culture.
you didn't hire for culture.
Yeah,
you hired for mission.
I agree.
Man, we keep reaching people, and oh my gosh, at some point you talk about it was a slow burn at first, but then growth became exponential.
Yeah.
And it's like, holy crap, we need a living, warm body to make sure we push this button, do this role, whatever, because the mission.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great way of saying it. We hired for mission, not for culture, and it I would say to an extent it worked. I mean, we reached, we were fulfilling our mission, and we were growing and reaching people and doing things, but internally the culture was starting to suffer. And
If you were going to name some names,
yeah, let me go through the list of names. And so it reached, I would say, fever pitch in 2018. And that was there. We went through a significant amount of transition, staff transition, over a year and a half's time. A lot of people, transition off the team. Some were good, some weren't good, the way it transitioned and everything. So again, not to go back to any of that, but that led us up to the point of going, we need to redefine ourselves. And it was from both internal and external. So when you came along, we were just in that process of really, with what I'd say, having the right people, mostly the right people at the time on the team. We were like set on creating a culture by design, not by default. In fact, your first day was us having an off-site culture
retreat
in church. Like we did 2 days or 3 days of intense, I'd say more like an intensive retreat.
Yep.
Of trying to reestablish
with your core team.
With a pretty big core team at the time. There's probably 7 or 8 of us there, of really trying to go, we're going to redefine our church. We renamed our church. We put whole new values for our church. We created new standards for our staff environments. We created new rhythms for our staff. I mean, it was a lot of people, from 2019 when we changed the name of the church and some other things, a lot of people thought maybe it was just a name change. And there was a strategy behind the name change. What a lot of people didn't know at the time, but they soon began to feel, was a complete shift of culture on the backside. And so the two of you actually were here for that kind of transition as we were making those changes. And so we had to become super intentional about the culture. Now, our top priority of any hire is culture and fit. Like, we have interviewed people. They're like, okay, they're capable. They're this. It's almost literally we'll ask the question, do you want to go to work with this person every day? You're just like, I don't know if they'd be a fit.
Yep.
Not that they're a bad person, but like, I don't know if they will like the environment. I don't know if they will fit with just the mission, I want to say ideology, the way, the methods and way we try to reach our mission. So that's been a pretty significant thing.
Yep.
Yep.
PZ, you were here 2 years before me?
Yes.
Got on staff a year before me.
2016.
Into 2016.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yep. Almost 2 years.
What did you experience culturally when you first got on?
Well, completely different roles, obviously.
Because he's not exaggerating when he talks about my transition. You told me you were up front before I moved here, but I'll never forget me and PZ randomly going to Cheesecake Factory or somewhere one night and him telling me, and I was just like, Our church went through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like really,
Yeah.
would blow people's minds through it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a tell-all book coming out soon.
Okay. I think what you said was correct. What's funny is I remember being in when I first got on staff. Do you remember All Access?
Yep.
It's what Welcome the X,
like Welcome
and,
the X,
and other things turned into. We actually had, I think, a set of 12.
10.
Was it 10?
I think it was 10.
10, 12 value,
Maybe.
something.
Yeah.
Anyways, the only one I can remember is we throw away the old chair.
The old chair.
We had these phrases.
You don't remember we share our fries?
Now I
Remember that one?
What were some of the other ones? I don't know if I remember.
Geez, I don't
We
know
need
if
your seat.
Yeah.
I don't think it was one of them.
Anyways,
I can't remember.
but there was kind of a loosely set thing that we kind of tried to follow. But if I'm being honest, it was something that was not really followed, not really checked up on. No one was held accountable. Let me say it that way, towards these values, and a lot of the values were even forward focused and designed to help the mission advance versus
those were more church
Yes.
standards, church values than they were
Yes.
staff.
Exactly. And so what you had was exactly what you described within teams even and different, at that point we were 2 locations. So even within teams and locations, you would find different rhythms for how you oriented your work week. You would find different patterns for how you would celebrate or do things. There would be different thought processes for how events should work and what it would look like. And I remember even a couple times trying to meet with and connect with directors or people from one location to the other, and it was almost like you had to interpret what you were saying because it was 2 completely different schools of thought. And it wasn't bad because there was a sense of we were all connected
Right.
to the same mission and we all were trying to achieve the same goal. So I'm not saying it was bad, but it just, I think it made it hard to feel like you were part of I don't want to say team, but you were, there was a deeper level of connectivity
Yeah.
that was missing.
I think it would be just to kind of double down on what you're saying, because it's easy for people to throw stones if they've never built something. But I mean, you built something from scratch without a lot of templates in front of you.
Yeah.
And this is before the days. I'm not joking about, but it really is before the days of podcasts and leadership. I mean, leadership conferences being normative and everywhere, and leadership books and culture being a normative thing that you talk about and emphasize. It's before all that. And you still built something thriving, and that shouldn't be minimized. All the thousands of lives that were changed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think probably we would agree that culture was by default, and whatever a lot of values you were crystal clear on the vision God had given you.
Right.
But a lot of values, if we're honest, probably were borrowed. What values we did have felt borrowed.
Yeah.
So it was a really cool season that for you came out of a lot of pain. You've talked about that. To get away with people that you felt like, okay, this is a group of people I trust. How can I take what's always been in my heart and really not, you never changed the vision.
Right.
But it was, how do I take what's actually always been in my heart and actually put, when you talk about culture, it's kind of a buzzword, but really, okay, how do we define what we want our church to be about, feel like, and look like, and what are the priorities?
Yeah.
And then how do we put language around that?
Yep.
How do we put rhythms around that? How do we put standards around that? And how do we now filter leadership and staff through that?
Yep.
And so that's a lot of what that retreat was. And so, obviously everybody listening is not part of this church. So for anybody out there, what are some of the things that we did under rhythms, language, staff, everything to shift culture? And you were talking a little bit about, what you felt, but again, without being negative, what specifically were the parts of culture we didn't like, and what did we choose to drive it towards?
Well, I think it's it's maybe it's a complex thing to really address. I think what we didn't like. I mean, there are some things. I think you very adequately assessed one of those things. There was not a deeper connectivity to our team. I don't think.
So silos,
probably
distrust.
Silos. There was a disconnection, a distrust of. I think too structurally, at the time, I think the pandemic really also helped us structurally become more cohesive because we also came into one location. So having the multi-site setup that we had with central and campus staff created, it always will, but it can create a sense of tension. It creates things even around the mission, other things that can affect culture. So I think some of the things that really impacted our culture was all of the things that we did intentionally, and then you add to it, I think, what the pandemic enabled us to do. I think that did help our internal culture to be able to gel and to grow together. And so I think we started, I'd say first from like top down, and I guess if there's specific things that you have that you say didn't like about the culture, I think some of it was there were people on the team, and again, this goes back to, I'm not trying to criticize anybody, because at one point everybody that we hired on the team was somebody we wanted.
Right.
I think it's often forgotten when things don't go well. It's like everybody is somebody at one point you wanted on the team. But for whatever reason, whether it turned out that there, again, sometimes there's performance things, sometimes it's more of an attitude, some of it, there's a variety of reasons why it may not work out with certain staff. But I think that there had been a lot of really hard things that we had gone through with some staff and with certain things that affected everybody else. And so it's kind of like if you have, the best way maybe to describe it is if you find out one day, and you could be going through life, and this is a great example, right? You can be going through life and everything's great, and then all of a sudden you start noticing you have a few symptoms physically. You go to the doctor and you find out you have cancer. And you had no idea cancer was growing the whole time in your body. You thought everything was fine and normal. And I think sometimes that can happen organizationally, that you can be going along and you're hitting your marks and you're continuing to grow and great things are happening. And then all of a sudden one day symptoms start to show up. And next thing you know, you look under the hood and you go, oh my gosh, I think we have cancer. And now we need to go through treatment. And so part of going through treatment is, what is it that's in the culture that's cancerous that you need to remove? And sometimes that, again, I'm not trying to say people are, but sometimes it's people, it's different agendas, it's different variety of things. And so I think a big significant thing was there were people that just, it was better for both us and them for them to part ways, to create a new culture. It's really hard to create a new culture when you have old mindsets still existing, because they will continually fight back against the change that you want to create.
Yeah, would you say that it's true, one negative, or it sounds harsh, but toxic person with an unhealthy toxic attitude has the power to pull down 7 people?
Yeah.
More than 7 people can pull up one person.
Because cancer has an ability to spread, right? Malformed cells actually end up multiplying. And so any kind of toxicity that lives in the staff long enough is going to affect and infect other people. And sometimes it infects other people to the fact that maybe they're not party to it, but they're so hurt by it.
So again, I'm trying
to move on.
I'm trying to drill down. What would be toxic or unhealthy behaviors of a staff person? Maybe you could say in any organization.
I think a misalignment for a variety of reasons. Don't agree with the direction. Don't agree with it. And sometimes, we can have difference of opinion at how we do something, but there needs to be a united front on what we're doing.
Yeah, you can disagree with a decision,
right,
but you can't be perpetually disagreed with the direction.
Yeah.
And
so I think that there was, and again, that's a nice term to use, but misalignment, I think it could be a difference of values. I think things that one person values and the way they do things can be really destructive.
People build their separate kingdoms.
Yeah.
I mean, this sounds very cheesy, old school, but I mean, the definition of division is 2 visions. It's the separation of vision.
Yeah.
So you can have different passions, you can have different skill sets. It's not a uniformity, but it is a unity around where you're going.
I think insecure leadership is another big one. I think you have people that are insecure. I think the way they treat the staff, the people they lead, it will come out as toxic. And so I think there's a variety of things. I think a kind of an old school one that may not in some environments may not match as well as in a church, but I'm just going to say plain old carnality. That if there is a carnal sense to people, and again, this I'm speaking more so to a
Spiritual
church or a spiritual
Yeah.
environment.
Yeah.
But if there's a carnal attitude or behavior that persists in an environment like that, it actually can infect other people in other areas. And so I don't know if there's any traits. I mean, it's really hard to honestly think back and pinpoint. I mean, I'd have to.
No, I think you got a lot of the big ones.
I'm just trying to do them
that
vague
would-
and big,
yeah,
because I'm not trying to the conversation.
Yeah.
Point of this conversation is not to try to like point fingers, because I'm at the end of the day and knew I was and did family. I'm responsible for what
Yeah.
happens here. So
Yeah.
I
No, I
think
just
it's
think
just
it's-
more of just trying to pinpoint what were some of the behaviors that.
Well, just a quick example of how that played out. So, I mean, I was actually hired on the exact same day that Pastor Jesse was hired. Literally, we started on the exact same day. He started as the Lancaster youth director, and I started as the Lithopolis youth director. And I remember, like, when we would try to get together and, like, connect and talk about different things, one of the things we talked about was, like, something really small, like, simple, like, when we showed up for work.
Yeah.
You remember Pastor Jesse would tell you stories about this when you took over in Lancaster, that it was not uncommon for there to be kind of not really a set time that Lancaster campus would come into the office. And so people would roll in at noon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. Well, okay, where's people? And whereas in Lithopolis, it was a little bit more like you got to work at 9 a.m., you stayed until 5 p.m., and it was more like, and that's just one example of like different leaders almost setting different cultures in terms of, or just expectations
Yeah.
for what was normative and what was the standard. And that seems like such a small thing, but when you multiply that across lots of other examples, you can start to see how there was a lot of division and not feeling that there was
Yeah.
a unity or connectivity across teams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Totally.
so we'll pivot to the positive. We're at this retreat.
Yep.
And then part of it, too, is, again, the name change. Like, I think you had mentioned, this is like right when I flew up there, that a leader had mentioned to you, or you'd heard over the years, that if you're ever going to change your name, the best time is coinciding with a building project.
I actually saw that happen. I don't know if anybody ever said it,
Okay.
but I saw that happen with another Crossroads.
Oh, yeah. So
Milestone.
part of it was timing. Like, it
Yeah.
was, you'd come out of a season of usual spiritual language pruning, where there'd been
Yep.
a painful pruning,
Yep.
but with it a helpful assessment,
Yep.
and then with it really space to dream. Okay, so then what do we want to become?
Yep.
Who do we want to be?
Yep.
So who do we want on the boat?
Yep.
And what is it going to look like, and what's the plan? And that was really that retreat, is to dream and to decide that. And so there's a whole strategy laid out of how we're going to unveil the new name.
Yep.
With it came a new branding. With it came new values, standards, all culture, nomenclature, really language. People underestimate the power of language in forming a culture.
Right.
And so and that's evolved some.
Yep.
But deciding our language. And so let's talk through the nitty gritty of some of those shifts. You got a football with you.
Yeah.
How does that go into our culture?
Well, this represents multiple things that we can talk about in our culture.
Cleveland Browns.
What? Not the Browns.
Love the Browns.
Not the Browns. So in this football, it's kind of seen better days. We just need to update this, but it represents it represents the values and the standards first that we developed. And so it gave us kind of like, we went in there with, hey, let's create a new name, felt like a new slate, new opportunity to
Do you remember the
brand.
phrase for all of our mottos for the rebranding?
I
New name,
remember
new
it.
future.
Yep.
New name, new future.
Yeah,
That's what it
I
was.
know. And
The little coin logo dissolved into the X, and
Yeah.
it was new name, new future.
and so funny. It's always a funny story about when we tried to unveil it too.
It is. I think about it every January.
Yeah.
And so that would have been 5 years ago,
Yep.
That's
January
nuts.
13th,
It's
and then
really
20th.
the 5 year of
January 13th, and then the 20th. So at the time of recording this,
Crazy.
we are right in the middle of missing our first reveal. So 5 years ago.
Crazy.
But so with this, we first came up with 7 new values that were church-wide. that we wanted to really reflect the heart of our church. And
these are external.
These are external. These are things that our church, the gospel is our priority. The lost are our passion. People are our purpose. All those kinds.
These are the things that when people come to the new class, we tell them this is how we describe the culture.
And you know what's amazing is how often, you know this because you teach Welcome to X a lot, how often people will tell you.
They see and feel those before they even know what they are.
Yeah. And can we just go back to the design default? That is not a back pat. That, I think, I don't want to speak for all of us, but I think the three of us would say those are the most encouraging moments. It is really easy to put beautiful poetry on paper.
Yeah.
It is another thing when paper becomes reality.
Yeah.
And you have people say, no, I felt this before you had to tell me this.
Yeah.
That's when you know a culture's strong.
Yeah.
Is when it's felt and you don't have to tell people.
Yeah.
Because every church this is the power culture. Every church on every corner, if you would tell me about you, we really love people.
Yeah.
We really love people, really love Jesus. But not in a negative way. You know that you could pop into any church on any day and not feel loved, seen, or like your family.
Yeah.
So anyways.
So again, the values I would say are kind of more external. We unveiled those to the church. But I think the important thing is they weren't just words on a wall.
Yeah.
They had to become. And so I think what we did, this is the benefit you have of the benefit of taking the healthy core DNA, like you were talking about from the vision from the beginning that has persisted. We weren't starting from scratch and just trying to come up with, here, what are 7 values? We literally were to say, we went back, like, what matters to us as a church? What are the things we practice? Out of that, we put the language of, and put it with 7 P's and all this stuff. We put the language with the catchy 7 values.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things was we honed in on what is really critical for our church and our culture, church-wide culture.
Yeah.
So I think that was the first step. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and then we took it a step further, that with the external values at least, is as we began thinking about new rhythms for our church, all of a sudden the new events and the new things we did weren't done from the lens of like, okay, how effective do we think these things are? How, like, why are we doing this? We evaluated them and said, how do these connect to these values? And in which ways do these events, do these things, do these strategies of ministry that we're trying to build and create help further show people or demonstrate these values? Which was, I think, the first time on staff that we began to really centralize and form a cohesive strategy around that sort of thing.
And embodying those values. And so we started with the name and the external stuff. And then we also, and we'll get to the rhythms, and we moved internal. And so I think part of having a culture that is done by definition is you got to define it. And so we came up before we talked through all that time about initiating the rhythms to execute it, but we had to define it. And so with that, we came up with 7 standards. And this is what we said about our values and our standards. And our values are, very external in our entire church. We try to, embody those with our church. The standards are behind the scenes and with our staff. We call them our staff standards, and then we have our values. And what we like to say when it comes to our mission is our values. We say this is what matters for our church. All right, the gospel is our priority, things like that. Honor is our posture. This is what matters. The staff standards, we say this is how we do it.
Yeah.
So that's the how. The values are what. The standards for us internally are how. We don't advertise these. These are staff things. We went over them. We had them on display. We did other things like that with our staff. But they became the values that we would talk about all the time and work from. And so I'll read them real quick because they're real simple. And it was, I think, 7. So we had 7 values, and we ended up with 7 standards. The first one is, and so the reason with this football that I will point out for anybody that's watching, I'm holding a football. If you're listening, you wouldn't be able to tell that, but I'm holding a football, and on one side of it, it lists, the white side here, it lists the 7 values. People are our purpose, excellence is our presentation, generosity is our privilege, the lost are our passion, servant leadership is our position, honor is our posture, and the gospel is our priority. Those are the 7 values. On the other side, it lists 7 words. These are our staff standards, and they have phrases that go with them, right? So like excellence. It's not only in our values, but also in our standards. It's big, right? But our phrase is we don't practice on people. And so we're not showing up to Sunday not sure what we're doing.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to preach a message that we haven't practiced.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to lead the church in worship that we haven't practiced, that we haven't prepared for. And so we would use that internally just to really talk about the power of being prepared. We don't practice on people.
Yep.
When we are serving people, if people are our purpose, then we're not going to practice on them. We're going to practice ahead of time. We're going to be ready for them, prepared for them. So that was excellence. The second one was communication. And we know in any organization, communication is a struggle. Yep. I don't care what size it is. It is a struggle. So we kind of leveraged a future forward thinking phrase. And we said, we over communicate. Now, at the time, we weren't over communicating. I don't know if we still over communicate. We tried, but it was a mark to strive for, is that we're going to over communicate. And so some of the things that come out of that is like, at the end of each week before we go into Sunday, usually write a base camp post for our team saying, here's what's on the list for Sunday.
Right. And the bad thing about that is I don't think it really matters, because by the time I post it, everybody all our teams have communicated so much it's probably a good thing. By the time I post it, it's kind of redundant.
Yeah.
And it's good for the whole team in case people work in a certain area and don't know. Yeah. But we really recognized the struggle with communication, and we thought we're going to set the standard that we're going to over communicate.
Yep.
So we're going to say it more than we need to. The third one was unity. You guys remember that one?
We row in the same direction.
Row in the same direction. And we just talked again about it's not just a mission. I love what Con said, and this is where I think culture comes in. It's not just the mission that matters. It's how we get there.
Yeah.
And the power of rowing. There's so much more power when we're all like. I think we use the analogy of canoeing, and we've had some experiences canoeing on
at
staff.
this table,
We won't go back to it.
Yeah, let's not pick out scars.
We won't revisit that, but there's a power when multiple people are rowing in the same direction versus
danger when
rowing against each other. So unity, and then innovation. That's always been, again, these are things that we went back and we said, some of these things have been integral to the life and development of our church.
These the phrase is we make a way.
We make a way.
Which shows not just that, because innovation can sound very artistically creative, but it's not just about being creative, it's about being resilient. Gritty, resilient.
Yeah.
We like to dream and then figure out a way to get there and not allow a lack of resources keep us from doing it.
Correct.
We've always been that way as a church. We always will, and I think there's a power in that.
Yeah.
In fact, a lack of resources is often what enables you to break through to new things that you've never done before.
Yeah.
And so innovation, we want to define I'd say, what are the staff standards? They're the attitude of a staff person.
Yeah.
We make a way. The next one's evaluation, which is
we evaluate a lot. Or
everything.
We evaluate everything. We evaluate
celebrate
everything. So we have season evaluations that we do. We do SWOT. So we started that after all of this, remember?
Which, if you're not familiar, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. It's an acronym.
Yeah.
An acrostic from business to just assess. We do it every Sunday and for every big event, every outreach week.
And we talked about this last week. As we start off our tech meetings, the first thing we do is we SWOT the previous one.
Yep.
We talk about what went well, what didn't go well, what did we miss, where were the marks. And so, again, this is all about evaluation. We evaluate everything. The next one was development. You guys remember that?
We duplicate ourselves.
We duplicate ourselves. And I think that's probably one that's probably still a struggle for a lot of us. I think we working on that and trying, but we recognize that as we grow, we need to continue to grow our leadership, and we need to learn to duplicate ourselves. If we are the ones doing the ministry, then we're the logjam. That we need to learn how to empower other people, servant leaders, other things, which, by the way, servant leader, just as a term, was part of the language of changing the culture in our church. And then the last one was celebration, which is
we celebrate a lot.
We celebrate a lot. So we'll say that. We do that. And so these standards then, and again, when you're shifting a culture, you got to go from defining it to putting it to practice.
Yep. So let's talk about how we do that.
So rhythms. One of the first things that we came up with was we said we're having a full staff rally every Monday morning. And so we get together, and we talked about it last week. So I don't know if we need to go back into it, but the football, if you're looking, is we just used this when we developed it just to play a little game. And so we would start off every rally with celebration because we celebrate a lot.
Yep.
And so we start off with, hey, let's celebrate what happened over this past week or weekend.
Yep.
And so people will share stories. In fact, to put you guys on the spot, what are some of the stories that we shared this past weekend, if we are able to share them?
Well, PZ found an amazing one that he shared.
Yeah, so we got an email actually just this week from someone in our church who, you don't want to get all the details, but just was in a really hard spot. And that can happen in life, and it can happen really in unexpected moments and ways. And so this person was looking for help, assistance, was looking for counseling resources. And if you've ever been in a situation where you need to find those resources, it can often be overwhelming to try to find, okay, what place accepts our insurance and what's their specialties and where they go in. We actually, as a church, have a list of counselors that we've prepared. We've vetted. They're Christian counselors. We have their areas of speciality, where they're located, how to get a hold of them, what insurances they accept. And this person was able to find this resource, use it, and the way this person described it, they said a weight fell off their shoulders, that they knew exactly where to go. And they thanked us for the specific words they used was the intentionality and a few hours of effort on our part saved them from a whole lot of effort and time when they were already feeling overwhelmed. So that speaks to excellence, being prepared, innovation, like thinking through a creative way to get information to people, and that's awesome. It's something to celebrate.
I think one of the things that is not considered one of our values, but I do think it's in the DNA of our culture because it's in your DNA, and because we've done a lot. As we go through this, we're going through this because we think it could interest people, but also to answer some questions we've gotten. But want to be really clear, like we're not coming at it from a place of a rival, but from a place of a painful journey where we do want to celebrate the progress we've made over the last few years, but we're always on a journey. And when it comes to culture, though, I think one of the things that you are is action oriented. And I think one of the things that has helped us with all we've gotten wrong is we've tried to take whatever we say we're going to do and whatever we say matters and put it into action, because we don't change through theory, we change through action. And a principle that isn't practiced isn't a principle, it's a pipe dream. And so for us, we've said, okay, what do we want to become? And then how are we actually going to put this into practice? Good.
Well, I don't know if to that point, I don't know if you remember this is now taking me back to like these moments and where we're at. But, as you said, we wanted to put these standards into action. Those first Monday rallies. I don't know if you both remember this. I think it was like a year straight. We just rotated between like 3 or 4 people, and all we talked about for a year were the staff standards and values. And it was the same, it was the same thing over. And in fact, I remember whenever we were like, after a year, we're like, okay, are we allowed to talk about anything else? Like, is this, okay, let's start to explore some new topics. But like, that
good.
Just helped cement the importance of the values and really help the team coalesce around them.
That's good. And I think it's such a great point. To piggyback off of it, going back to evaluation, we've also had seasons since then where we've evaluated and been like, hey, it's been a while. We got new staff, we got new servant leaders. Maybe we need to go back. We've had a couple seasons where we've gone back and be like, hey, we need to do another rotation through standards and staff rallies, another rotation of values in servant leader rallies. Let's talk. Some of these things are basic if you listen to a lot of like leadership podcasts, but let's talk about some of the things like for anybody listening that's like in a culture, trying to build a culture that's healthy. I mean, there's some basics, right? There's repetition. Old leadership author used to always talk about vision leaks. Well, culture leaks. So especially when you're on the ground floor, kind of what you're speaking to, of building a culture, especially, when you think you've been annoying by repeating it and emphasizing it, you're just getting started. So repetition. Second one, we all know this, celebration. We've all heard it said, but you celebrate what you want to see repeated. And so the best way to build a culture is not to slap the hand of someone who doesn't get it yet, but to celebrate publicly and privately. Man, that right there is what I'm talking about. That was awesome. I noticed how you did this. I noticed how you did that. And just human psychology, you can call us Pavlovian creatures, whatever we are, like we're going to be like, oh, I want to get in on that. So repetition, celebration, vision. Vision and culture do have a symbiotic relationship of this is why this matters so much. Like if the vision's the rocket, the culture's the fuel maybe, right? And so this is where we're going. This is the mission, and this is why this matters so much about who we're becoming.
Yeah.
To help us get there. I think another thing that really helped us, especially I feel like the core of us, we didn't do it perfectly, but I think a lot of times I've seen this. I'm sure I've been a part of this. Is like you have this big idea for culture, right? And then you put beautiful, powerful language, and then you try to drill it into a mass of people, and it's not yet been internalized.
Yeah.
I used to hear Larry Bryce say the best way to change culture is to be the culture. And it sounds cliche, but it's so true. Yeah. I think the first step in like building strong culture is for the core people that are part of that to first embody it.
Yeah.
And when that happens, I think number one, the best change comes from the inside out.
Yeah.
Not trying to force it from the outside in. Number two, when your top influencers are bringing that, it's going to spread. But number three, I think when your core is embodying it, I always. Again, this is a Larry Bryce thing from Elevation, and this may come across crass. You may not like it, but I think he would always say the strongest culture is when you go from Boy Scouts to Marines. In Boy Scout culture, if somebody does something wrong, they try to find the adult and tattle. Hey, this person did this.
Right.
He said the Marines, if you get out of line and put somebody's life in jeopardy, they don't bother telling the commander. They will take you behind the woodshed, beat the crap out of you.
A few good men.
So we started taking each other out behind Lithopolis and beating each other up. And I'm just kidding.
I still have scars from that moment.
I'm just kidding. But the point is, a healthy culture is self-policing.
Yeah.
You hold each other accountable.
Yeah.
It's not gossipy and nitpicky and I'm going to go tattle and distrusting. It's like, no, you're brothers and sisters in arms and you care enough about each other and the mission to where you're going to sharpen each other. Yeah. You're going to hold each other accountable. You're going to help each other. Yeah. And so I think embodying it, those are a few. Repeat, celebrate, vision, cast vision, the why. Yep. Go back to your why. You lose your way when you lose your why, and then embody it.
To move us along the narrative, we did this retreat that you are talking about. We did that in August of 2018.
No, September.
Was it September?
It was right. Just the beginning of September.
Okay.
September 9th.
September. There you go.
Wasn't that the day you started? That was a Sunday.
That's my
September
official.
9th.
That's the date that got put in the books.
Yeah,
but I
think that's a Sunday. So
but didn't you fly up though before your official day?
Yes.
So I think you flew up
He came up in August
for that retreat.
No, the retreat was I think when he started. He came up for some
so
event
I flew in for an interview in July.
Yeah.
Flew in for the retreat in August. Flew in to move here in September.
Are you sure? Nah, I'm pretty sure that I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Okay.
Could be wrong.
So either way, it happened in early fall, but then I think you talked about the core group that for us was the entire staff. And out of that retreat came our very first, there's another rhythm that has been a regular part of what we do, staff conference, or affectionately known as
Conference.
that was a season when everything we
went
did
a little bit crazy on.
We're putting an X on everything.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Now that's shifted and evolved over the years. It's not always looked as what that one looked like, but I remember that being the first moment that we gathered everyone together and said, okay, this is who we are as a church, and like let's all get on the same page and move in that direction. That was a special moment in time.
Yeah.
And I'll just say too, just shifting the culture. I want to say it shifted fairly quickly with who we had on the team at the time.
Yeah.
But shifting culture takes time.
It does.
Like
it does.
It took. I mean, what's interesting is a year after we really put work to shift the culture, and I think we were feeling it. Then the pandemic hit. And I think then we also pulled together. I think that's one thing that a pandemic or something like that, a tragedy or something like that happens, is it causes you to pull together. So I feel like it amplified the importance of what we were moving toward. Yeah. And so I think though, when I look back, I think it took probably a couple years to really solidify the culture. And part of what happens
it's felt inside before outside too.
Yes.
Because it took a year or two for people that aren't even on staff to say something feels different and healthy.
And I also think that one of the things that a strong culture will do is it will kind of like what you said about policing itself. The people that don't fit within the strong culture you have will rise to the top. I'm not saying that in like cream of the crop rise to the top. I'm talking about like when you're smelting something, it'll expose, and they will leave.
Yep.
One way or another, they will leave. Because and I'm not saying everybody that's left the staff since then is because of the culture. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm just saying it does, like, when you are intentional about going somewhere, if people, especially those who have been around before it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's taken a transition of staff and a few years of being intentional, of repeating our rhythms. Like, we still do the Monday rally. We'll still do celebration. We kept celebration honor. We've changed other things that we've done. We don't just talk about staff standards and values all the time. So we may have done a leadership thought. We may pray together. We may do, learn about someone's area. We may do whatever. But those staples and doing those routinely over time have laid the groundwork for who we are as a staff. And I think, some of the language, we began to say, no, this is the language we're going to use. And so when we started referring to our church, and you'll see it in our emails, you'll see it in other things, we go, you know what, we're going to refer to our church as a family. Because one of the things that we want to be, even as a staff, and we want to be as a church that's growing, we might be a bigger family, but we're still a family. And that was...
So you're saying whenever we say, hey, X-Fam, that's not just some casual lingo. That's an intentional. It's intentionally casual.
That
but
goes back to the conference. I mean, I was or not the conference, the first retreat. Like, we literally started saying, let's put language to how we refer to our church. Let's put language to, and part of it came out of, what do we want our staff environment to be? And I think it's like, we know it may grow and take shape, but one of the things I think anybody who's on this team feels when they're on the team is they, in many ways, do feel like family. Like, we laugh together, we have fun together, we celebrate together. We're in, environments and that are sometimes intense, of, like seasons that are busy. We have all kinds of things. And so I think it was the development of language. Another one that came out of that would be, like, we shifted from calling our volunteers to servant leaders. And we wanted to put a different nomenclature. And I think that's the thing about what makes a culture, this is the cult part of culture, is there's a common language that is often internally used and maybe externally used that maybe isn't always used every place else.
Yeah, I think that, plus, you mentioned it in passing, but not in passing, but you talked about how, like, strong culture will expose. This doesn't sound very nice to say, but it's just the truth. Strong culture, like, one of our values is unity. The ironic flip side of that is strong culture is divisive. In the same way, if I can, spiritual parallel, Jesus, his biggest prayer was for unity. Father, let them be one as we're one. Unity is near and dear to the heart of God. But that same Jesus said that I've come to bring a sword that's actually going to end up dividing homes. Because when something powerful, culturally, spiritually happens, it has a way of unifying and exposing. So we're huge on unity, but if somebody in our group just begins gossiping, that's gonna be addressed, or it's gonna divide. And so I think that's why it's easier to not have a strong culture.
It is.
That's why default's easier. Because it's kind of, you just kind of pacify and just do whatever.
You don't want to rock the boat.
Yeah.
But instead you're going nowhere because everybody's paddling in different directions.
Yeah. Which is, again, I just want to hammer down, it's not the same as uniformity. One of the things that's kind of ironic is we've talked about this, we have a really abnormally wide space for different types of views and personalities and gifts, and you're not an authoritarian type leader where everybody has to have the same theological or cultural view as you. We have different opinions theologically, politically, across the board, different personalities, approaches, passions, whatever. But when it comes to the health of culture, like we draw lines. When it comes to the direction we're heading in vision, we draw lines.
It's good.
That's great. I mean, I think that's, I don't know, that's not that short, but maybe an hour, but short version of kind of like the story of how we were intentional about creating the culture we have now. And then the big thing is you have to maintain it.
Yeah.
You have to continue to do some of the rhythms that are good and try to make them creative and different ways of doing it. But you have to, and like I said at the beginning, now it is one of our number one things when we are looking to hire is not just someone's skill, someone's passion, or someone's heart. We're literally looking to see if they're a cultural fit.
Yeah.
Will they, will they be someone that we think, and it may not, it may have nothing to do with some of the people we've interviewed before and stuff. It may not be anything as a slight to them. We sometimes look at some people and we go, I'm not sure they're going to enjoy us.
Well,
it's like they're really serious. And there are times when we are, but there's times when we're not. I don't know if they. Remember we
Speaking
thought
of,
that. Remember,
I wasn't at tech meeting this week, but I heard you got put on timeout in tech meeting yesterday.
Yeah, I kind of did. I mean, I was controlling the thing, so I put myself on timeout, but I did. But it's
true.
It is true.
Yeah, it was. Well, I'll tell you later why. Not on here, but
I don't remember why.
Oh, I remember. It's seared in me.
Okay.
But I will say, what you're saying is important because I think we under spiritualize, or if you're in a corporate environment, we underemphasize the importance of likability.
Yeah.
And the importance of enjoying the people you work with.
Yeah.
It's not always a prerequisite, but depending on what you're trying to build and the intimacy and the bonding and camaraderie that's going to be integral to the culture you're building. I've heard of large churches and companies now that literally, the hiring process is so long because they have a certain amount of people they want to hang out with them to decide, is this the kind of person I want to hang out with outside of work?
And we do part of that for our interview process after they interview with, like, say, a direct. Maybe that would be the hiring supervisor. Then they'll interview maybe with, if that goes well, they'll interview maybe with someone else on that particular team or an XLT member. But one of the interviews that they all do is everybody interviews, they interview with other people on different aspects, different teams, different whatever, literally for cultural fit. And, because they say about your family, right? You don't get to choose your family. Well, we like to be family around here. The difference is we get to choose our family.
Yes.
And so we literally are, we will have interviews and questions and different things, and we'll have different people. You could be interviewing for a ministry job or facility job, and you're going to have someone on the creative team. You're going to have someone on this leadership role, this, all sitting in on an interview, literally, because they're just wanting to know, man, is this somebody we want to be around 4 days a week, 5 days a week?
Yeah.
Like, is this somebody we want to be in the boat with? Because we're going to row together. And so, we're always learning and growing in this, but these are probably, I guess, what some of the foundational things that we did to become intentional and create a culture by design.
Yeah,
that's good.
Here at our church. So
that's good.
That's good.
Yeah. So I think that's it.
All right.
Hopefully it's helpful.
Yeah. If you have any questions,
how are you going to end it? There was something you were going to say at the very end. Do you
I might say that for another one. Okay. You know what? I'll give one last though. One last little cultural thing. If you've
we'll save it.
Once you've defined it, repeated it, celebrated it, cast vision for it, embodied it. But maybe the toughest part of strong culture is you have to then enforce it. I'll circle back with another Craig Rochelle leadership quote. He said that culture is what you create and tolerate.
Yep.
And the whole thing of what you don't confront, you condone. And so it's one thing to say this is our culture. It's another thing to have the grits.
Grits?
I was gonna say guts and grit, but I said grits. There's the southerner
what
in
kind
me.
Of grits do you like?
Butter and stone sugar? Ground cheese smoked Gouda grits. So you got to have this. If you're gonna say you want a strong ribeye culture, you got to have the smoked Gouda grits to confront it.
I wouldn't eat those.
Nope.
But I do like grits.
And
I like buttery grits.
Stand by the Yankee table that I'm at.
I like some buttery grits with some cream or milk or cream with sugar. I guess it kind of reminds me of cream of wheat. When I was a kid, I had that. Like that was what we had growing up.
I like
oatmeal. I feel like
oatmeal.
there's something nostalgic that
Same
takes me
thing?
back. Grits does.
No. No. Cream would be more similar. But
Good
all
catch.
right.
That was me
So
passing you the
football
ball so I
Fred
can honor you.
gave it a culture Chad, who gave it to Vision Veal.
Okay.
Homeschool Harry.
Homeschool Harry.
Homeschool Harry.
All right. Hopefully this has been helpful. Send us in thoughts,
Hey,
questions.
I'm curious if people have any thoughts about our culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they have like a question, like, oh, what happens when Pastor Tim goes on timeout? Where does he go?
We are not allowed to say that, apparently. You guys tell me after we get offline, because I can't remember, honestly.
Okay. Oh, wow. All right. Thank you for joining us for this week. Pray warmer weather. We love you. We'll see you. Until next time. Bye.
Hey guys, it's Russ. Thanks so much for listening. We really believe if we can get around tables instead of behind screens, if we can talk to each other instead of at each other, we can make the world better. To help us do that, here are a few things you can do to help. First, if you haven't yet, leave a review on Apple or Spotify and hit subscribe on YouTube. This helps more than you know. Also, if you have been impacted by the community out of which this podcast comes, that's X Church. Maybe you're local or you've been touched by the messages and impact across the country, even the world. I want to encourage you to support this work. A powerful life principle is to invest in the people and places that invest in you. And so I want to invite you to do that right now by going to thex.church/give. You can give a one-time small gift, a sacrificial gift, or even become a recurring partner. Together, let's keep elevating the conversation, thinking higher, loving deeper, and making the world better. Cheers.